Well, thank you all for being part of this session. Really excited to have Zach from our platinum sponsor, Genesys, here today and kick things off. So Zach, maybe to kind of get us moving here, let's just talk maybe a little bit, let you introduce yourself, talk about your role at Genesys, what you've been doing with them, and kind of how that's evolved over the years, and let's go from there.
Sure, thanks. So my name is Zach Hinkle. I'm a principal product manager at Genesys. I'm now in my 18th year at Genesys. Started out my career at Genesys, actually at Interactive Intelligence. Started mostly in care roles, what we used to call a technical account manager. Then I was a support manager. I really enjoyed it. I'd been mostly on the hardware side in the telecom space prior to that. In college, I'd taken a few software development courses, and the only thing I really learned was I am not going to be a software developer. So it was confusing for me to really enjoy joining a software company and getting into the space. But through that time in care, what I learned was I really wanted to be on the other side of the fence. I really wanted to get into, essentially making the sausage as opposed to supporting it. So I moved into a role, I don't even recall the title, but essentially I was the everything IPA guy. Not the beer, that would have been more fun. But it was called Intelligent Process Automation. And I spent about 3 years traveling around the world, attending conferences and meeting with customers, trying to really launch that product. And that was my first foray into product management. Then moved into, at the time, we were trying to get into the cloud like everybody else was trying to get into the cloud, right around 2011 or something like that, and got asked the question, what's a service? And that was kind of my job interview question. And I was like, I don't know, what is a service?
Good question.
And my boss at the time was like, that's going to be your job. So went on started my cloud journey at that point, defining what does it mean to offer software in the cloud? What is a service? SLAs, software updates, all that sort of stuff.
Right.
However, hosting software in the cloud isn't really cloud software. It's really just hosted software. And at the time, we were launching or getting ready to launch what we called Pure Cloud. And that was a complete do-over inside of the. We even shipped developers to another city and cut them off from the corporate email and said, you have to start over. If you had to do it all over again, how would you do it? New languages, new technologies, that sort of thing. And I got brought in about 18 months after that had kind of kicked off. And I've had roles helping build out our ecosystem on the reseller side. So features that our resellers use today to manage our customers. From there, started building out our ecosystem, built App Foundry, and was the first, basically, marketplace in our space that could do free trials and automatically deploy software. So our thesis was you should be able to find an application, buy it, or do a free trial of that application, install that application, and then cancel it in under 5 minutes. And we were able to accomplish that. Now it's not so crazy, but at the time, when you were looking at deployment cycles of 6 weeks and longer, you used to have to get a DVD of the software. You'd have to buy a server. You'd have to, potentially screw around with the Windows registry or something like that to get it to work. And we were able to automate all that stuff. So that's kind of what I've been focused on for the last 5 or 6 years. And then most recently, kind of got back into the process automation, or what we were getting ready to launch, called work automation, which launches at the end of the month, which is kind of what we're going to talk about.
Awesome, love it. It's always interesting to talk to people that have been in the SaaS space before it was called SaaS, and we're trying to figure out what does that truly mean when you develop it. Yeah. Curious, just kind of thinking back maybe over the last 5 years, some of the trends you've seen and how that's kind of evolved just in the last short period of time.
Yeah, well, it's evolved a lot. The first thing I think we had to do was admit that hosting software is not SaaS software, or is not truly cloud software. It's almost like admitting, hey, hi, my name is, and I have a problem. So that was kind of the first step. In terms of like, the trends, the big thing, customers coming or used to premise software, having full control, hardware, software, updates, patches, all that stuff, along with all the customization options that you could have in premise software, selling customers or getting them to take a leap to the cloud, especially 5 or more years ago, was actually, it was a tough sell. So that was the initial thing. Then it really evolved into, excellence in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
How quickly can you deploy new features? How are you really running a true SaaS company from a feature standpoint, compliance, all those things. And then also educating customers on, okay, configuration, not customization. Because in a lot of cases, customers were just so used to having it their way,
Mm-hmm.
and really adopting new practices was probably the hardest trend to kind of buck and get people more focused on configuration and speed of delivery, and no longer having to worry about some of the operational challenges. They still have operational challenges. They're just different ones.
Yeah. Maybe as a follow-up to that, I mean, thinking about 5 years ago, the migration to the cloud was one thing, and now here we sit in 2024, it's almost accepted that everybody's going to go that direction. Do you still see, I guess, customers that are kind of hesitant to make that leap? There's concerns, or maybe what are those concerns today?
I think I think they're largely the same concerns. I mean, privacy used to be one of the bigger concerns, but with the things like GDPR and I can't remember what the California one is. It's very similar to GDPR. We've kind of gone above and beyond that because we do have financial services companies, and so almost everything in our platform is a GUID, 25 characters, and you practically need an act of Congress to be able to see anything in the clear. So our support engineers hate it because it would be a lot easier to search for John Smith. So privacy was the big one. With large enterprise customers, they're the last kind of, I wouldn't say the last holdout, but they're the slowest adopters. Mm-hmm. They generally have the most to lose. If it doesn't go right, people have to stake their careers on jumping to the cloud. That's absolutely, that trend is actually coming down. And anymore, it's still the same argument over configuration, over customization.
Right.
Jumping to the cloud is a chance to rethink how you do things. We have customers that have 8,000 business rules. Or we have one customer that I think they wanted something like 20,000 unique skills configured on the platform. And there's better ways to do that. So it's, to some degree, it's convincing folks that there are different ways to skin a cat, and helping them understand all the benefits, along with no longer customizing to those degrees.
Right.
But that's it's still, that challenge is still there, and probably will always be there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd imagine you probably still always have some that just are, for whatever reason, are going to just not.
This is not what I'm used to, is what they're telling you in as many words as possible.
Yeah.
This is not what I'm used to.
Yeah. So kind of changing gears a little bit, thinking about maybe what's coming in the next 5 years. We spent a lot of time today talking about trends we see with AI, conversational AI, things of that nature. We'd love to kind of get your perspective on, where are we going? What's next?
So I'd like to, when thinking about, or at least from a Genesys perspective, the things that we are thinking about, when you look at the chart on the left-hand side, those are the traditional reasons why people are reaching out to a contact center. They've got a question, it might be a sales thing, they might be angry, they might have a support issue. The reasons customers are reaching out, for the most part, hasn't changed, and I only see the channels and how customers get serviced changing. What I see for the most part in the next 5 years is a bit of convergence, lines starting to blur. What today we call a CCaaS solution, we see it moving more towards a customer service platform. So There's things that contact centers have done, like routing, channels, those sorts of things. I think that's going to continue, but with the introduction of things like AI and co-pilot type features, knowledge management, surfacing that stuff to agents in a more effective manner, and essentially leveling up or powering up agents. Workforce engagement, there's a lot more emphasis. It's not just scheduling anymore in traditional QA. There's gamification and things like that. And then workflow is probably at least professionally for me, and I think it's going to evolve this way where customers are expecting more workflow, where bots and things like that can do more of that upfront work, but bring more of the back office into a single platform to be able to service work and essentially orchestrated experiences, orchestrated outcomes, for predictable results. I see that from at a high level, the direction, and a lot of customers are used to needing somebody else for knowledge, maybe needing somebody else for workflow. Not too long ago, you wouldn't think to buy a workforce engagement platform from the vendors making the contact center. It was very common to have bolt-ons. And the appetite for bolt-ons is no longer really there. They expect integration. And they're looking for as much functionality in the box, effectively, or in the cloud from a single vendor that they can get. Genesys' strategy for that is to try and service as many of those we start at an MVP level and then layer on, or minimally viable product, and then we start to layer on things. The next big trend, I think, or that we see, is the leap from transactional customer interactions. If you call into a contact center today, if you enter in your phone number, maybe they'll do a DNS, or not a DNS match, a DID match. Maybe they'll know why, or they might have some idea why you're calling, but it's essentially a transaction. It is a single conversation, kind of like this conversation, but it would almost be like if we got off stage and we had no memory of what happened. The next time you call in, it's a brand new interaction, and there's no historical context to you as a customer. I don't think that trend can continue. I think customers, our customers' customers are going to start to expect more. They want you to know, I want you to know me. So whenever I call in, you should already have a good idea of why I might be calling. If I called in last week to complain, and let's say something is not completed that you were meant to do, I might be angry when I call in, or I might be calling in for questions. So moving from a transactional model to a more customer-centric or engagement model, where contact centers are treating customers more as individuals, and each customer has their own individual journey, and you can visualize that. You can look for trends. You can see potentially what they were searching for on your website, or what types of knowledge articles, or what's been offered in the past. And tying that together into more of an engagement model as opposed to a transactional model, like where you're engaging with the customer over the life of them being your customer. I think that's probably the big thing coming. And it's going to inspire a lot of technology advancements, and lines between traditional workforce engagement platforms, knowledge management, workforce. I think those lines are going to start to blur.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And we're starting to see some of that already in the industry where, if you're calling your airline, they know that, hey, you're calling because your flight's canceled, delayed, there's some issue going on that you want to get fixed, and certainly we see more of that from a spread perspective coming up. As you think about some of the strategy from Genesys to kind of thrive in this ever-evolving market, what sets Genesys apart to be able to continue to be an industry leader in this space as you go forward?
Yeah, targeted investments in certain areas. If you don't, any company that's not investing in AI, whether it's the deployment of AI or the advancement of AI, and integrating that into more and more of the business, I don't see how you survive unless you are making some investment in the AI space. But even the AI space really starts to blur the line between traditional knowledge management. Knowledge management traditionally, you kind of had to know what you were searching for. It was on the agent to be able to glean enough from the customer to know what to look for, to know what to potentially present to that customer. But AI, with co-pilot type features, the AI can be listening. It might be a bot first. The bot can't do it. It maybe goes to an agent, but that bot is still there in the background, listening to that conversation and proposing. So the idea of going out and searching for a knowledge article or content, that paradigm has shifted, and Genesys is making investments there. We're making investments, as I mentioned, in workflow. We have work automation coming out at the end of this month. That is a big leap for us. We have a couple of motivations for that. We had a platform called Pure Connect and Pure Engage or Engage, the Genesys Classic. Each one of them had process automation suites. Now we have far more customers still on Engage using what was called IWD, Intelligent Work Distribution, I think was the name of it. But we have a significant amount of revenue there, and it behooves us to try and make sure that they don't seek other places to go. We want them to move to the cloud, and we actually have some of those customers can't move. They're too invested in IWD and having a workflow tool for back office processing, whether it's some of them are equipment manufacturers or consumer equipment manufacturers, insurance companies, financial services. It's too integrated in their business to not have that as a part of their contact center solution. So we have a pretty strong motivation for that reason alone. But we think it goes beyond that. We think a lot of companies are going to start looking for more orchestrated ways to accomplish work. So it might be a bot routing work. So a bot may be completely ending a conversation, and it's really a human that's doing the back office tasks and doing more high value things like that. So we see that as a very big deal. Genesys uses the term orchestrated journeys, and really what you're trying to do is orchestrate results and predictable outcomes. So those are our the same would be true to some degree with workforce management. Our play with work automation, most players if you buy a standalone BPM, it's a standalone BPM. You can, there's some really great ones out there and very powerful, but they're not integrated into a QM suite, to a WM suite without outbound capabilities. Maybe they've got, some basic email and SMS, but they might not have a dialing solution. They might not have a scripting solution. The same reason why Genesys has been successful for a long time, the all-in-one concept. The all-in-one concept, just the definition of that just kind of keeps getting bigger and bigger. People want more and more, and they don't want to have to bolt on. Our play in the work automation space is definitely unique because we can bring all those other technologies. So work is just another interaction type, but it's different than a traditional transaction model. You might have a prescription for when you reach out to customers, automated touch points, and those sorts of things. And flipping the script and going from transactional to more of an engagement model, I think. Most of our investments are geared that way, predictable, orchestrated journeys.
We've talked a lot today about the idea of obviously conversational AI, bots kind of taking a larger and larger role, the impact that has. Be curious to kind of get your perspective on, and I think there was a poll this morning of how quickly that happens. Is it 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? What's your thought on the evolution of just bots in terms of as they fit into this world and taking a larger role and really streamlining some of those initiatives that Genesys is going to have?
kind of look at it the same way whenever I talk about time with my kids. A day is long, a week can go by kind of quick, and a year can go by in a blink of an eye. Wait a minute, we were on vacation, but that was last summer. So I remember 4 or 5 years ago, a year or two before COVID, maybe, so it could be even longer, when AI was first coming out. And I was in a room in Sydney, Australia, and somebody was on stage and said, "Who here is interested in AI?" And everybody like, "Oh yeah, of course." And then it was like, "Who has a plan to implement AI?" And everybody was like, pfft. It was kind of like asking, it's kind of like saying, everybody knew we have to do it. We have to do it, but nobody knew how to get started. And that was a big challenge. And then the last conference I went to right before COVID, the guy for the NBA who was running their Alexa and Google bot, I remember him saying, we have 33,000 utterances and growing for how to ask the score of last night's game. And he was like, that's last night's game. If you wanted to ask it different, because you could say the Bulls, doubles, Chicago Bulls,
right.
There was just so many utterances. And it was so intimidating to customers to get started. And most of those barriers they're just crumbling. Now, especially when I've looked at some of our competitors, how quickly you can build a bot. You can basically just point it at a URL and say, ingest this content. And then at that point, you can have humans help to start to iterate it and train it and, manage it. But, the getting started, the barriers to entry on that are considerably lower. So it's hard to predict the future. I believe Yogi Berra said. I don't know when it'll be, but it's coming, and it's going to be here sooner rather than later.
I look at we talked about ChatGPT not too long ago. People didn't really know what that was, and now I've got high school kids, at home that are using it to help them do their homework and write papers. And my wife was a former educator, and we talked about the ability of kids relearning how to learn in a new way because all information is available to them.
Oh yeah, I mean, I use ChatGPT. I had to write a couple strategy papers, and I'll write out all my thoughts, and then I'll just throw those thoughts into ChatGPT and say, formulate, a strategy based on this, or so it's definitely going to be different. I see that as inevitable. I think everybody does, but it is amazing how quickly nobody knew what ChatGPT was. Less than a year ago, really.
Yeah.
I mean, and my grandparents know what it is. Like that's truly amazing.
Yeah, it does change fast. Well, I know we want to save a few minutes for some questions. Maybe give you a chance. Any closing thoughts or things you want to share with the audience before we pivot over to questions?
I'm as excited about being in this industry as I was when I first got started and really started learning the technologies. There's so much to learn, so much to build, so much ground to break. The thing I love the most about my job is going into the office or Zoom these days and going into engineering meetings, asking questions like, how might we? Mm-hmm. How might we? And then insert challenge, and then building something and bringing it to market. That's pretty fun to me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love
Appreciate that. Great. Well, let's take a couple minutes and just poll the audience. What questions do you have for Zach, and open it up to any questions out there? I'm sure there's lots of hands. I just can't see you because the lights are blinding me. But all right. Well, if there's no questions, we'll wrap this session. And thank you all for your time and attention. Zach, thank you for joining me, and it's a pleasure. And thanks for being here.
Thank you.